Good evening. My name is Jennifer Buxton. I'm the Assistant Director for Planning and Community Development. We want to welcome all of you here today to the community input session for the HUD funds. I'd like to thank Council Member Sylvia Campos for hosting us here in District 2 tonight and see if she'd like to say a few words.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you so much to the people that did show up. But we really are talking to the whole community. And I was just letting Jennifer know how wonderful it is to be in a space like this at the Ben F. McDonald Library, formerly known as Greenwood Library. And just letting the public know that we still are looking for input. It doesn't stop here. We are hoping that these dollars go directly to where they need to go. So if you have your ideas, please bring it on. And I also want to make sure that I acknowledge our council member at large, Dr. Jim Klein. Thank you so much, Jim. If you know Jim at all, I think he shows up at almost every event, if not all or some or most of them. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having us here. And I guess I'll turn it over to you, Jennifer.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you much. Greatly appreciate it. Also joining us from the staff are Dan McGinn, the Director of Planning and Community Development, and Ms. Leticia Canmore, the Grants Monitoring Program Manager. What we're going to do is we've got a little bit of a presentation, and as I go through some of the material, we will then get to some questions and talk about some projects, okay? Again, thank you all very much. If you are joining us on one of our channels, please feel free to put your ideas or any questions into the comments. We are going to monitor those. Those comments and questions will then be incorporated into our report to HUD. So what are we doing here tonight? This is our community input session for the fiscal year. This is a mouthful. 2025, program year 2024 annual action plan for the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnerships Program, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. Huh. Brian? I had it 20 minutes ago. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Brian. So what are we going to do tonight? We're going to do an overview of the annual action plan planning process. We're going to discuss the priorities, discuss the use of funds. We're going to go over the program basics, and then we're going to get input on the new annual action plan. All right. So what is this plan? So when we receive money from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, we're required to every 5 years turn in a consolidated a consolidated plan. And then every year we're required to update that plan with our annual action plan. We're in year 2 of our annual action plan. Last year we did year 5. Year 5 is a little bit more detailed in terms of demographic information, census data. We did input sessions like this. We did a community survey, but now we're in year 2. We're setting the year 2 priorities or the year 2 projects. So what did we determine were the priorities for the 5-year plan? They include increasing and maintaining affordable housing, which included housing repair and rehabilitation, home buyer and home builder programs, tenant-based rental assistance, creating affordable rental housing, which included both new construction and rehabilitation, then public facility and infrastructure improvements, parks and recreation facilities, youth centers, neighborhood facilities, accessibility improvements, and curb and sidewalk improvements. The plan also included a priority for blight removal, which can include code enforcement, addressing homelessness, supporting homeless efforts, emergency shelter operations support, creating and maintaining affordable housing, whether that's new construction or rehabilitation. You'll notice that activity is covered under 2 different priority categories. And then a program called Rapid Rehousing. Also included in the priorities were public service, which can include our priorities of homeless supportive services, senior services, and job training and employment skills. And then also included with these funds is administrative and planning. Okay, so how are we going to go through this process? Well, here we are. We're doing our input on community development and housing needs from these community input sessions. We're doing 5 input sessions. This is our 3rd here in District 2. So there are 2 more. Anybody from any of the districts can attend any of the meetings. We're going to release our notice of funding availability on April 1st. There'll be a technical assistance workshop on April 4th. And then we're going to draft our plan for public comment. It'll be released in June of 2024. So if you want the opportunity to make public comment on the plan, you can look for that in June. And then we'll present to City Council in July. There's always a public hearing at that time. And then we'll submit to HUD in August. We're required to submit by August 15th or 16th. So what are we talking about in terms of dollars? HUD has not released its budget or formula allocations for this year. So these are what we received last year. And we're usually pretty close from year to year. So in the Community Development Block Grant, we received about $2.7 million. The community received $1.4 million in the home program. And the Emergency Solutions Grant received about $236,000. So the Community Development Program Basics, Community Development Block Grant Program Basics. There's a couple of eligible activities, more than a couple, eligible activities under CDBG. They include housing rehabilitation, home ownership assistance, public facilities and improvements, blight removal, code enforcement, economic development, acquisition and disposition of real estate, and public services. With CDBG funds, one of the things you have to do is meet a national objective, no matter what you're doing. There are 3 possible national objectives, and believe me, we're coming to a point here, I promise. We have to meet a national objective. You either have to help benefit low to moderate income persons, prevent or eliminate blight, or meet an urgent need. Now, we're not really talking about urgent need when you're doing a plan, because an urgent need is if something comes through like a weather event, a hurricane, or possibly an earthquake comes and devastates part of the community, then it triggers the urgent need. So what we're really talking about is preventing and eliminating blight and serving and benefiting low to moderate income persons. But we can help low to moderate income persons in 2 different ways. If we run a housing rehabilitation program and you assist somebody who lives in a house, we've helped a low income person. But under the Community Development Block Grant Program, you can also help people on an area benefit. Why is that important? Because if we want to help put money into a library or a community center, a senior center, a park, well, you're not necessarily helping one person, you're helping the area, right? So that area has to have at least 51% or more of low-income persons. So keep that in mind when we're about to talk about projects, is it going to help a low-income person or a low-income area? Does that kind of make sense to people? Okay. So there are parks in some part of town that count and parks in some other parts that do, right? Okay, do and don't. Wrong way. Speaking of areas of town, this is a partial census tract map of the census tracts in the city. Anything that is in green would qualify as a low to moderate income block group. I see the council member shaking her head because she sees a lot of green in her district. Yes, that's true. So any of these areas, so when you're thinking about public facilities and public projects or sidewalks or whatever it is you're thinking about, think about these green areas. Is everybody with me on area? Okay. Census tract. Census tract. No, ma'am. They're census tracts. And as a matter of fact, Community Development Block Grant is based on a subset of a census tract called a block group. So you could have a census tract and the entire census tract not qualify, but a block group within that census tract could. Okay, so remember how we talked about the priority list, right? Well, now let's get into what priority projects you would like to see funded with Community Development Block Grant programs. And out of that priority list, some of the eligible activities included increasing and maintaining affordable housing, public facilities and infrastructure improvements. Remember, that's our parks and rec. That's public facilities, blight removal code enforcement, addressing homelessness, and public services. And to kind of just give you an idea, a couple of the things that we do with the Community Development Block Grant is we fund a minor home repair program that helps persons who are at or below 50% and our seniors. It helps them with minor home repairs like putting accessible showers into their bathroom. We, the city funded putting a generator on the central kitchen. So if the city loses power, the Meals on Wheels folks can continue to make meals for homebound seniors who need them. Those kind of projects. Salinas Park has received quite a little bit of Community Development Block Grant funds, those types of funds. So are there any projects, and we're not vetting or saying yes, right? They don't have to be perfect projects, but are there any projects that you think would meet these priority needs that you'd like for the city to consider this year?
Absolutely, the affordable housing is a necessity.
Okay, does he have a mic? Just one moment. Thank you.
Affordable housing is by far one of our biggest necessities, and not only because it's geographically important where we're standing today, but overall across the city, the affordable housing, I think, needs to have an initiative to bring everybody together, to equalize out the services that are rendered in any one area, and thus lowering social economic needs.
Okay, so can we explore that just a little bit further?
We sure can.
Fantastic. So what types of services would be offered at this housing?
Well, I think that I would probably get a nay if I recommended what I'm seeing in larger cities, and they're trying to break down their HUD housing projects that they have that are centralized in any blighted area. Obviously, that needs to be corrected in some way. And moving affordable housing equally throughout, distributing it throughout the city would balance out the needs and resources for each community, which would then lessen the costs and increase the viability of pulling people out of their homeless situations, enticing them to strive for more.
Okay.
And I use the city of Chicago as a premise. I guess you can tell I'm from the city of Chicago. But breaking down their housing, which was in the tens of thousands, was a remarkable thing to achieve. And their answer for tearing down all of those concrete jungles that we had was to first place everybody in housing across the city. And they used a small footprint townhome asset. And I'm not saying that that's appropriate here, but I am saying it definitely is something that should be viewed as a concept that we can use. If we project community throughout all neighborhoods, we're equalizing this need to develop a community that's striving to do better.
Okay, so better geographical distribution of affordable housing.
That would, in a nutshell, yes.
Okay, so is there a particular part of Corpus Christi where you think there's a need for affordable housing location-wise?
I don't know our particulars on the new developments going on for the rental industry. I hope in the rentals we're allowing for what HUD considers appropriate of 10% being designated affordable housing HUD on anything that's over 50 units or above. That might not be something that we have here, and it might be something that the city council might consider. I think that at this point it would be hard to change what is already in progress.
Some sort of inclusionary housing policy,
right.
Okay.
Another is when you're building any new subdivisions or larger projects and expanding the city, just make sure that we include the affordable housing in each project individually. Again, to help balance the resources.
Okay. Okay. When you talk about affordable housing, are you talking families or seniors or both?
All, yes. Everybody's
Okay.
in need, and distributing that, I'll leave that for the
Okay.
politicians to
All right.
decide.
Are we talking rentals and home buyers or rentals or home buyers?
You know, it's an interesting concept because here we can modify Chicago's idea where it was simply HUD housing, and they were giving certificates, and of course their share of that had to be paid. So low-income housing was their preference. Here, we can modify that to extend it to investors that then have investments in townhomes, small footprint, 3-house townhomes in any area that are then funded under HUD and managed by independent investors.
Okay, all right. Does anybody want to add anything on to that about affordable housing under the Community Development Block Grant Program?
I think that we need to also look at the rehab part of it, because there are a lot of homes in the neighborhood that you can see need to be either a new roof or the garage, you know, it's just falling down. That needs to be addressed. And
Okay.
I'm sure that unless the family or homeowner comes forward and says, my mom, my dad, my family member needs help to redo the roof or needs something, they're not aware that that's available. So a lot more promotion for that type of assistance. I have checked to see what's available, and I'm being told for the last year, honestly, that there is no funding. There is no money available for any type of rehab. One of my neighbors needs it desperately. And every time I call, and I make it a point to call once a month.
Yep.
And I am told there is no funding available and there is a waiting list.
Yes, there
How do you
is.
get on the waiting list if you can't even apply? So it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
So
Well,
that needs to be addressed.
so there is a waiting list, and because the waiting list was so long, we stopped taking applications. I think we're about to start taking some applications again, but in order to keep a reasonable waiting list, I think we're going to have to look at how we, who's eligible for the program even further, right? Because the need is so great. How do you prioritize the greatest need? So what do you think the greatest needs are?
Definitely buildings that are coming down around people, roofs that are leaking to the point that there is no protection inside the house when it rains. They're to the point that each case needs to be looked at on an individual basis and then prioritized. Is the roof important? Is the foundation important? Is the garage getting knocked down important? And the family can't afford it. A single elderly person is not on a income that can do that type of work.
Okay, so you bring up elderly. When we talk about the rehab, and when we talk about the rehab program or a repair program, who do you think should qualify? Should it be just elderly or maybe elderly or families? What are you thinking in your head
It
about?
needs to be both.
Okay,
It really does, because if you have a single mom with 3 kids, how do you differentiate her needs and the kids from an elderly person?
okay, okay. Thank you. Is there anything else? You have something you want to add about housing? Okay. Just a minute. We got to have the mic because we're online.
Extending what they say. Title 8 will enter in that idea that he has as investor, because there are people that buy house and rebuild it and whatever and put it to sale. But I also saw that they put that house in Title 8.
Okay,
So extending what he was saying for community to rehabilitate and so forth.
okay.
Title 8, entering that.
Okay, getting those projects into like the Housing Authority Section 8 program. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Got it. Fantastic. Does anybody have anything else they want to add on the affordable housing piece? Okay, great. That's excellent. Any other priorities on this list that you want to talk about that maybe you have an idea? Again, we're talking about all right, here we go.
We might be back here to the reason why I'm here, and I'm addressing homelessness for all.
Okay.
This is every single homeless person, and I deal with them on a personal level, so it's my heart's desire. Enabling the homeless people to have a connection with each other that helps pull each other up. There's nobody that knows homeless better than the homeless.
Okay.
As people achieve a higher standard, a tier in society, they now have not only the ability to see what the homeless were experiencing, they came from it, and so did I, but enabling each other to help each other up through the process. And the process can be anything. I suggest that we invest in a project that utilizes the technologies that we have. Every cell phone can have an app, and every single cell phone can have a connection to every homeless person, every volunteer, and every social worker. And they can be hands-on point of contact for everybody that's in a stress situation. It takes social services away from the city's expense and adds it to just all of us that give a damn about our society. It's definitely enabling everybody to help themselves.
Okay. So peer-led or lived experience support, some sort of peer network program.
Yes.
With a technological interface among all of the stakeholders where people are making different connections.
You're rocking this.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So have you seen any sort of platform, technological platform like this somewhere else?
Well,
Okay.
I know the platforms exist.
Okay.
I know that they're not free.
Okay.
And I suggest a platform that is free to us, being an expense for us to do this in a needful way for Corpus Christi, and not a different city that's outside of the same realms as what we're in. You know, the quantity of people, the income levels of
Okay.
our society all make a difference in how you build it. So I'm suggesting that we take a minute and view the technologies and see if we can make them fit that will actually draw the numbers down on the services that we have to provide,
Okay.
saving the city money and increasing the power of the homelessness.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody want to add on to the homelessness priorities? While we're talking homelessness under Community Development Block Grant. Yes, ma'am, just a moment. Yeah.
Back here.
There is adequate space.
Part of my concern, I live in the neighborhood, I walk my dogs, as we discussed earlier. There are a lot of empty buildings up and down Air Street.
Yes.
One caught fire not too long ago. It's still sitting there with just a few boards up. So homeless people are getting in it again, and when it's cold, they set fires to stay warm. So we need to do something about those empty, old, dilapidated buildings. I think
Okay.
I said that right? Because they're causing issues, not only for them, but for the rest of the neighborhood.
Okay.
There are businesses on either side of those empty buildings that are still viable, but the empty buildings are attracting people that could get hurt, have been hurt inside those buildings.
Okay.
Okay, so part of the blight removal,
Yep.
getting code enforcement involved, but then, okay, so you've cited the owner or owners, what do we do next? Can we just come in and tear them down? I lived in Dallas for over 20 years. They would come if the house had been empty, nobody wanted to take responsibility, it was empty and just falling apart, they would come in and,
They would come and knock it down?
yes.
Okay.
And that really, really helped, because then other investors would come in and buy the lot, put up a nice house. Sometimes they would buy 2 or 3 lots next to each other and put up apartments, affordable housing again.
Okay.
So it's not a one-shot thing. I think there's multiple things that can happen. These buildings are next to each other sometimes that have not been occupied in forever.
Right.
Let's get rid of them. Let's put up something that can be used, that can bring some relief to the street homelessness and to the people that live in the neighborhood, because you don't dare go out to walk dogs after dark, because you have to deal and contend with a lot of this, and it could be drug related, it could be mental issues, etc. But we need to do something to help.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody that wants, is that triggering any ideas? Anybody with code enforcement or blight removal? Does anybody want to add on to that? Okay, this is good, this is good. Okay, so let's talk about public facilities for a minute. Does anybody go to a library or to a park? Does anybody want to add anything about parks or libraries? Okay, fantastic. We're going to move on from Community Development Block Grant. If you think of something, we'll come back though, all right? So the Home Investment Partnerships Program, also known as the HOME Program, whereas Community Development Block Grant can fund multiple things, as its name implies, it's only housing, the HOME Program. But there's a couple of different types of activities: housing rehabilitation, home ownership assistance, new construction of affordable housing, and tenant-based rental assistance. So out of our priority projects, remember that list we started with? These are the activities that would qualify under the HOME program. And remember, CDBG had 2 different types of low-income benefits, right? Area or individual. With the HOME program, it has to be an individual. So that green map with the green squares, it no longer applies. We have to be talking about an individual, not an area. So out of increasing and maintaining affordable housing, knowing that what our gentleman friend up here, we're carrying that on, right? Addressing homelessness through the creation of new units and administrative planning. Is there anything anybody wants to add to this about affordable housing? We've talked extensively about repair and remodel programs. We talked about the creation of affordable units, inclusionary housing policies, using it for small footprint programs, geographic distribution. Is that triggering anything? Does anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Remind me, what is the rule of thumb for the affordable housing for, like he had mentioned before, for new, development? Is it 8%, 10%, 15% that has to be reserved for affordable to get the credit? What can you remind us what that is?
I'm sorry. You're talking about for the low-income housing tax credit
Yes,
program?
yeah.
There's a couple of different rules, but sometimes it's like 60% of the units for people at 40 or 20% of the units for people at 50. But the majority of our low-income housing tax credit projects are either 100% affordable or they may have 10 or so market rate units. But the percentage of affordable units is always substantially higher than that of the market rate units, or they don't get the majority of the tax credits.
Okay. Well, and I guess do you mind? Some of the things that I've been wondering is, we need something, of course, we've got a really huge homeless issue. And where is it that the actual homeless community can reach out and get actual housing? I mean, where is that component here?
Okay, there's a couple of components. The first would be, okay, let's back up. If you're homeless and you're starting from scratch and you have no income,
Yeah.
the chances of going into a unit funded by HOME that requires rent is slim to none, right? Because you have no income. unless you have been through some sort of tenant-based rental assistance program or a voucher program. So, and we're kind of off topic just a little bit, but we're going to do this. It's important. So if you're a person who's unhoused, you would go through a provider, whether it is the housing authority who gives points and priority points for a housing voucher for somebody who's homeless, or you go through one of the service providers that's doing tenant-based rental assistance, and that could include a couple of the different homeless providers that we fund, or it could be the Nueces Center for Mental Health and Intellectual Disability. They have a program. Different service providers, based on the population that they serve, have rental assistance. And if you're homeless, it can be a path into a housing program with some case management. Because if we do an affordable development through this program, chances are you're going to have income or a voucher that's going to cover your rent, because the way these are structured. But there are other programs that do that subsidy. And like I said, I get people signed up for a tenant-based voucher through the housing authority. You get some serious points to bump you to the top of the list. But the other piece of that is, in order to be successful, most of the time case management is also required.
I would agree. And just to bring it back home and on homelessness, you know, we just had, last week, you had to go, you know, to a location and really remove all the people that were in that location. And at the time, what I heard was that there was nowhere for them to go, and that is an issue. What is it? I mean, like you said just now, they would have to go through, you know, the MHID or through something like that. But we have to be able to say, okay, we've got 20 people here, and instead of just giving them a piece of paper with all the phone numbers, which we and you know, there's no help at all. So
go ahead, finish your thought.
yeah, so there's no help. I want to know, and I hope that our city starts addressing that. If, you know, in the future, we're going to continue to do that and displace, you know, these individuals, that we have somewhere to take them to, or say, this is where you can go, instead of giving them a piece of paper and not really offering, you know, a place, because they're all full. I mean, we all know there's a waiting list, there's years and years, but we right now, this is why I think, you know, we're all here, and it's sad that there's not as many people, but that issue hits hard, you know, because I know I personally have, you know, family members, and I don't know if you all do, but it's something that touches our lives, and we're here to say we can do better, and we will do better, but we need to make sure that that money, whatever money we can get, should go. I've looked at units. I called them she sheds, okay? I looked them up online, and they were like, I don't know, $4,000. And I'm suggesting this. Why is it that, you know, we've got city property? Why not get like a city property and, you know, get some of these homes, get, you know, a few, and see how that would work. I mean, that's something. We can't just keep, you know, hitting it down, you know, the road here and not, I mean, we're going to have to do something different.
Okay, so wait, hold that thought. Hold that thought. Don't.
All right.
Let's explore this just a little bit, can we? Okay,
Yes.
so you're talking about a tiny home village on city-owned property.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm
Okay.
suggesting.
All right, so, and again, we're not saying yes, we're not vetting, we're just talking about projects.
Yeah.
In your head, how many units are we talking about?
I don't know. Like, it depends, I guess, on the property. Like, for example, in my neighborhood, there's a little corner in my neighborhood that says I've got a park, but it's not really a park. It's just an empty lot.
Okay,
It's been there, I don't know, as long, I've been there over 25 years, so I think, anyway, so there's a park there, and I want to say maybe if they were to build a house, probably 3 houses would fit there. I don't know what that acreage is,
Okay.
but I'm just saying, that's one that I know of.
okay. So maybe it's not one location, but scattered site?
Yes.
Scattered site, okay.
Yeah.
So it's on city property, who owns them? this project, when we build the houses, who owns the houses?
It would be owned by the city.
Owned by the city? Okay. Is there an operator, or what kind of services are provided?
Well, these would be individual homes, so we would be able to bring them in because, they have no income.
Okay.
But there would be a caseworker or someone to
Okay.
guide them and make sure that, they're at least getting some help.
Okay.
But at least they would be out of the elements. At
Okay.
least they would be somewhere to go to. So that would be the start.
Okay.
And it's like a progression, like anything else. They end up, there, and then you help them get a job or help them get the medical attention that they need, or, they just need a helping hand. I mean, they just, got behind.
Yep.
Whatever.
Do they stay in that unit, or do they transition out of that unit?
They would transition out of that unit.
Okay, got it. Yes. Into the mic, please. Thank you.
That's a great idea. Having it run by the housing authority that we already have in place, City of Corpus Christi Housing Authority, that again has 3, 4, 10 years waiting list. I know 10 years is an exaggeration.
It's not.
Thank you. But
Waiting
we
lists are
already
long.
have an agency that's in place that could monitor small houses. I lived in North Texas for over 20 years, retired, came home to Corpus. Up there, they turned old, what am I looking for? Hotels into places to house homeless people,
Okay.
homeless family. But again, it was transition. So they help you get started, get back on the right track, give you basic training. Maybe you have skills from before that you need to hone to use now. And then 6 months, a year later, you're moving out because you have a job. You can afford an apartment now, not in Dallas, but anyway. You are more self-sufficient than
Okay.
you were when you walked in the door to one of those housing facilities.
Okay.
We have several hotels sitting empty downtown. Why not use somebody else's idea, imitate it here, see how it will work for us? And again, we already have the housing authority running apartment complexes. We
Okay.
can have it expanded into that type of a situation with the small houses, with a hotel, or several apartment complexes that may need to be rehabbed, so they're sitting empty. Why
Okay.
not think about how that would work?
Okay. When we're talking about this idea of hotels or tiny home villages, scattered sites, as we're talking about this in your head, are you seeing chronic homelessness, people on the street? Are we talking about family, short-term homelessness? Who do you think we're talking about?
Both.
Both?
Both.
Ma'am, you're talking both too? I saw you shake your head.
I mean, these are small. What I'm thinking is like a 10 by 12. It's very small, so
Okay.
I don't know what would be feasible.
We're talking about a single in
Yeah,
that case.
just
Okay.
probably, a single person. But again, this is an idea. This is something too that could be even offered to, let's say, a resident. A resident could say, you know what, I don't mind putting one of those homes in my back, and if the city is willing to build it and do it, and then, I can help, be like not like a guardian, but
A host.
a host, yes, be willing. And maybe we could pay them, just to.
Okay,
because
interesting.
it would take off, all the others, resources that we're using. But if we're willing to pay a host and say, okay, look, they're going to be here for a little bit, and, it's just, but to open it up to residents and individuals throughout the city, because I think one of the important things too is not to have everybody concentrated. I mean, I know sometimes you can't help it, but if it's done throughout the city, then, you feel like you're part of the community.
Right. Right. Okay. It's not so isolating maybe, or, okay, thank you. Is there anybody that wants to add on to the homelessness part? Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead. That's what we're here for. This is it. There's still time on the clock.
Okay, so I think it was last year, maybe late last year, I heard that there was a homeless person appointed by city council or the city, that there was a team, or I don't know what to call it, that they were going to be addressing this. There was federal funding, this position and department was created. What became of that? And
So-
where are they?
That's the Homeless Services and Workforce Housing Group. There's 3 of them. They do a couple of different things. There's an outreach coordinator who literally does that, coordinates outreach among all of the different providers. And then there's an administrator and a manager, and they're managing the process or the grants that we get from the state. They're also working with the Texas Homeless Network to evaluate how this is going to get past these HUD funds, but how the continuum of care funds are allocated, how to bring more funds to the city of Corpus Christi, and implement a permanent supportive housing program, hopefully, and working on the rollout of the Home American Rescue Plan funds that will be for case management and tenant-based rental assistance. But a lot of what the team does is deal with the citizen concerns and the emergencies that come from homeless issues in the community on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know what happened to them.
Nope.
I tried finding them,
Yeah.
but no luck.
Respond to the weather events.
Oh, and then the weather events as well. But yes, can we? Sorry, Leticia.
Just a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
In that program for the homeless that the 3 that you mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it that, is in any part that they can coordinate when they are throwing the homeless out of the camps?
Okay, so
See,
yes. So I do think
see any one of the city people when they were throwing those and they were showing it in TV. I didn't see it.
so.
Saw the police throwing them away. And what I mean-
Go ahead, ma'am. Finish.
What I mean is, somebody has to be coordinating those 20 or 30 people that they are throwing out to give them where to go and how to go there.
Okay, so.
Is it
Yep.
that program? in any of those-
Yes, ma'am, and I want to correct a couple of things, and then I want to. This is an important conversation, but I want to make sure we stay on track. But I do want to address what you're saying. So what you see and what happened are not also always the same thing. The outreach coordinator was there 4 weeks in advance of the event, including every day leading up to the event, which happened on a Thursday, asking people, what are your plans? What can we do? This shelter has room, this one doesn't. This program has a bed, this one doesn't. And services were denied. People denied needing them, denied needing them, and then denied needing them for weeks leading up until that event. That homeless outreach coordinator was out there on site multiple times leading up to that with more than just a piece of paper. What you see on TV is not always what happened. I will also say you made a comment about the police. The police did not remove anybody from that site. They were there from security because there are people on that site who have very long arrest records that include a lot of violence. And that's why the police were there. But there was no instance where the city police department or the port police were involved because there were no incidences that required their involvement. So I think there's some misconceptions about what went down because what's portrayed, but that doesn't mean that that's what's happened. And I will be glad to have this conversation with you on another night. I have one more program that I want to make sure that we get to, but I understand that that particular issue is an important issue to the community, and I'm not trying to blow you off. But I think there's a lot of misconception about what actually happened and what was portrayed. So, but my email address, and I'm going to give you my phone number, and if you want to talk about this more, I'm happy to have that conversation. Okay? It is important. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, we can continue to talk about it, but let's get through this one, okay? What's that?
became a priority.
Yes, ma'am. So remember that slide that talked about, we've got 2 more of these. We've got one in District 4 and one in District 5, and we're going to show those slides. And then what happens is we go out for applications, and then we draft a plan. And that draft plan will have the priority projects in it that we then recommend for city council consideration. That plan has to go out for 30 days of public comment. So we accept written comment at that time, and then it's presented to city council with a public hearing. So even after these meetings, there are 2 more opportunities as we narrow down the focus. Does that make sense? June.
You want to follow what's going to happen after these discussions, right? That's what she's asking. Like, what, after you get all the input, then what's...
We get all the input, and we take the input, and we decide what should be eligible, and we accept applications. And depending on the applications we get, we can prioritize them based on the feedback. Then we put it into a plan, which includes the list of projects that staff are going to recommend through the city manager to council for council's consideration. Can you grab the mic, please?
You said that this would be available to the public, that plan would be available to the public for comment then in June before it comes to the council in July. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How is that available to the public then in June? Is that through the website or in some other manner?
It is available at the La Retama Library. It is also available on our website.
Okay.
I don't have the date in June that it becomes available. We are always required to put a notice in the caller, a legal notice in the Caller Times. By the way, just a tip as a community member, all the good stuff in the newspapers in the legal section.
So before June, then, is it between now and June, between, let's say, Thursday is the last of the district meetings of this week, between this Thursday and June, is there another public opportunity for public input, or is it only going to be in June?
Between the community input sessions, then the next opportunity for official public comment would be in June
Right.
as part of the way the process lays out. However, there are going to be 4 email addresses on the last slide, and we'll accept anybody's input at any time.
Oh, okay.
Right, and we'll have a conversation.
Great.
However, officially through the process, we're having our community input meetings, and then the written plan will be available in June.
Great, thank you.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Is there anything else on the affordable housing piece? What I'm getting out of this for the home program is a method for persons with no income and possibly a need for case management to find a path into what would be more traditional affordable housing. Is that fair? Okay. All right, the Emergency Solutions Grant, and we've covered a lot of this next piece, but that's okay. The Emergency Solutions Grant is the only funding source that we have that is dedicated to serving those who are homeless. The ESG program has a couple of components to it. They are street outreach, homeless prevention, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, HMIS, which is the Homeless Management Information System. It's a federally required database, and it is exactly as fun as it sounds. And then there's the administrative activities. These are what's eligible under the ESG program. And remember, from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the city receives about $236,000. So based on these activities, and these funds generally go to a couple of different nonprofits that apply for them, these are our priorities: addressing homelessness, supporting homeless efforts, homeless prevention, street outreach, emergency shelter, operational support, and a rapid rehousing program. If you're not familiar with rapid rehousing, it is exactly what it sounds like. Somebody has lost a job in February, and so they've lost their housing in February, but they have a new job in March, and so there's just this tiny, short, quick gap where they're homeless. They get into a rapid rehousing program, they're back housed, they've got a new job, and they're back on track. It's a very popular program. It keeps homelessness to a very short duration. So that's what a rapid rehousing program is. Do we have any projects based on these priorities with ESG that you would like to see the city consider or fund? We'll carry those all through. Thank you. Well, thank you. Is there anything else anybody wants to add in terms of homelessness? The wheels are turning. What do you have? The mic is right behind you.
Well, I do believe, and I've heard this from Father Bruce about the homeless, the homeless support, the nonprofits that are, we have, I don't know how many, would you, 30? I mean, there's
Okay.
quite a bit.
Yes.
The silos, okay, there's a lot of them. And what I'm hearing is that we have not had either, maybe the city, that's what Bruce is saying, that, maybe if we could get the city to lead that coalition to say, okay, everybody report to that one system. I believe that it is time for the city to step up and say, okay, we've got all these nonprofits. Everybody needs to be reporting to one system, the system that you just mentioned.
Okay.
Because you all don't run it, right? The city does not run it.
We do not run it, but we use it.
Yeah.
We enter data into the HMIS system. Anybody that receives federal funding is required to use HMIS, but if you don't receive federal funding, then you are not required to use it.
And so that's, I think, where we're not coordinating and nobody trusts anyone. I think this is what I'm hearing. And I think it would be, wise, and I can see that that hopefully we can be able to trust the city to run this database so that we can actually know, where are all these individuals? Let's identify them. Let's see where they're going from, one, nonprofit to another, but we need a centralized system. And I'm sure you've heard that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So would the city can we put that up? I don't know what you would call that.
Well, HMIS
Yeah.
is an
To be run-
eligible activity under the ESG program, so we're writing it down.
Okay.
Leticia's writing fast and furious over there.
Can I follow up with you? Because thank God for Father Bruce. That's all I can say. I've got to say he's a huge influence in my life, and I've also got to say I'm a bit of a poet, and so I have to see faces. I put homelessness faces into words. Now, that wasn't a prelogue to a long speech here, but I can tell you that the need for the homeless is not going to be fulfilled if the homeless are scared of the system. And as a firefighter in Chicago my whole life, I've seen more people that didn't want to be part of the system try to run away with broken legs, try to get away from me because I was in uniform. That's Chicago, that's their problem. But here we have the same thing. I meet homeless people every day, and without me sitting down and letting them know my background, they aren't talking to me. If you show up in any kind of a civil way of dealing with things, and I'm talking about civil on the city's HMIS doesn't even touch people on that scale. We're dealing with the lowest of the low, and we're trying to get them in some kind of needful care. They're not going to go. I don't care. When you get into HMIS, well, darn it, you better have a degree to understand that data system. Because I know it well, and it's spreadsheets and data. We need point of contact data. The minute that I approach as just me, Dave Thumper, civilian, I approach somebody and I talk to them, and simply with an app, I can register not only their needs, but the valuable time that I incite in them in believing in what we're trying to do.
Okay.
So point of contact can be done with a cell phone.
Okay.
That data connection can be sponsored by the city, and she's absolutely right. The connection of all the silos, they're not.
Okay.
They're all going for their funding, what they're going to get, and they don't want to release any of their data. I couldn't turn to them and obviously I'm in a technology field. I can't turn to them and ask them for their data to analyze where we have our needs in Corpus Christi, and they're not even giving it to you. They don't have to.
Correct.
It's the other way around. And we need a point of contact data system for our city, so the city knows where the resources are needed, where the people are. You talk about pit counts. That would be the point in time connection. We go out there and we find all the homeless people. Well, heck, that's done every other year.
Every year, it's annual.
It's an annual thing, but HUD only wants the actual detailed ones in odd number years. So this year, they're not even looking for the actual point of contact. It's every other year. So, yeah, you're right. HUD has their hoops that we have to jump through. HMIS has their hoops. The silos have their hoops. And this homeless person, Nathan's, I call him, because Nathan is a face I know, and Nathan is sitting there all alone. And sure, I'll bring him shoes, and I'll bring him food, and I'll put him in my phone as the contact. Well, that contact information is extremely valuable to the city. And if we use that information I know these are luxury terms, because they're luxury terms for the city because they don't have to put any money into gathering that information.
Okay.
We're doing this as
Got it.
people that love
Okay.
our city.
So grassroots connections, data collection, data sharing from a grassroots and organizational perspective with shared access.
Connect the silos,
Okay.
and the city will
Okay.
benefit tremendously.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Mike, please.
We also have to look at their medical needs, not just housing, and of course, food needs, their basic needs. A lot of them are either drugs or using drugs, self-medicating, because they have other conditions that
Yes, ma'am.
need to be self-medicated. And providing a place for them to stay is one of the many things that they need, including medical attention. So I don't know if we can get the medical field involved
Okay.
to help in some way, or to provide maybe once a month, once a
Okay.
quarter, some kind of medical attention to them. I did hear that there was a new clinic opened up that doctors are volunteering their services. And I took someone there because they were not doing well.
Where'd you take, do you have an address?
No, I had it, but I don't have it at the moment.
Okay.
The clinic downtown? 6 Points, yes, yes. And I was surprised that there was no one there.
Okay.
Okay, so either the word is not getting out, or, you know, you guys didn't know about it. The word is not getting out.
I don't know
or
about it without an address.
They don't know that
Okay.
that's a safe place to go to, and there's no charge for any of the services. One thing she did tell me, the lady I spoke to, is that they will not give medication. If a person needs medication,
You have to come and get it?
they have to come and get it.
Okay.
And then you go back to, how do they get there? The bus does not offer free rides.
Nope.
You know, who's handing out bus tickets to get there? So there's a lot of other components that go along with this. It's not just, oh, here, we're open, come in.
Transportation is a real problem.
Transportation is a major problem.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm hearing better use of data, better collection of data throughout the community among providers and grassroots efforts. Okay. I'm hearing about encampments and where people go when they're being removed from encampments. I'm hearing about medical needs, and we talked about the blight removal. Is there anything else that we'd like to talk about homelessness?
My experience working with the homeless. In the psychiatric units
Yes, ma'am.
and in the police department. And this is the thing that in my mind, I don't know. These homeless were kind of new in being homeless. So how do we get the data to this central thing if this, in my experience, they were discharged from the psychiatric unit, put in the grain house and gone wherever he was going to get lost,
Right.
okay? Because he wasn't going home. So in the emergency room, sometime we will admit it to the psychiatric floor for a couple of days. And again, they are discharged to the Greyhound.
And then you don't know where they went. The other part of that that's really problematic is that any data system that has wide availability isn't going to have that data in it because that data is protected. So that kind of data isn't shared anyway. That's a whole other, yeah. So you're bringing up a real issue. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes, ma'am.
It's called Compassionate Care Medical Clinic, 1660 South Staples, Suite 100.
Okay.
And there's a phone number, 361-500-0122, that people can call to find out what type of services they offer. And it's totally free, and it's for anyone.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing.
Can I also plug another?
Yes, you sure can.
Let me plug another place that people can go for medical care. And as a matter of fact, I used it, okay? I used it personally.
Please
when
share.
I was, I had to choose between getting a car payment, having a car payment to go to work or having insurance, and I couldn't afford it, okay? So I ended up, okay, I'm gonna be without insurance. But this place that I used and saved my life was Mission of Mercy.
Yeah.
And they just had a fundraiser Saturday, and I can tell you that they do it with love.
Yeah.
And so it's open to anyone that needs medical care, and they will actually, they even do dental, and they're
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So
So if we're plugging medical care, let's not forget Timmons Ministry,
There you
Gabbard
go.
Clinic, Hector P. Garcia, and Amistad. Let's hit them all. Okay. Thanks, folks. Thank you very much. So we're here at District 2 on, what's today, Monday? So on Wednesday, we're going to be at Janet Hart in District 4. And then on Thursday, we'll be at the Garcia Public Library in District 5. Same time, 6 to 7. Questions and input on need. This has been a really great group, and we're very thankful. This is us. Leticia's email address, Nora's email address. She's unfortunately not with us here tonight. My email address and Dan's email address as well. If you leave here and have a wonderful idea in the shower tomorrow morning, do one of us an email, okay? No, that's where a lot of people get their ideas. On the drive home, any last thoughts? Doesn't have to. No, thank you for coming. You've been a really great group. We greatly appreciate all of the interaction, all of the ideas, all of the conversation. It's been fantastic. If you are on our channels, please feel free to ask questions or leave comments. We will monitor those, and they will be included in our plan development.
There's a slide with the next meetings somewhere.
Oh, we did that already? Yep. Okay. Thank you, folks. Really appreciate it. Have a good night.